Okay, good afternoon, Zoe. I trust you're well. Thank you so much for making panel today. And also thank you for submitting your report on time. That's a very, very big thing. So I'm truly overjoyed that the report is on time. It makes life a lot easier for everybody involved. Um, okay, so I suppose what we'll just begin with is just a really short review, perhaps maybe in 2 minutes on your side, of how you think you've made progress between last panel. I know we had an additional panel, but last panel and this panel with regards to your work, your goals, and the things that you've been doing.
Well, I think since the last panel, there's been a few campaigns that I've been sort of working on and delivering, including Activism Week and LGBTQ plus History Month. So that's been a big thing. There's also been a lot of issues within the university. So in terms of engagement monitoring, a lot of students are being sort of put into the withdrawal process even though they've been attending classes. There's a lot of issues with exams. So I guess this term there's a lot of big issues and things that we're needing to pick up with students. So that's, I think, something I enjoy helping students with, but also something that is, it takes up quite a lot of officer time. I think, yeah, it's kind of been interesting to see what's happening this term because I obviously was here last year and I felt like this was the sort of more stressful term. I think it probably is every year, judging by the 2 years that's been like this. But yeah, I think some key things that I've kind of been thinking about with like different student groups. So something that I was going to report to you on today that I can't because we've pushed the focus groups back is the commuter student focus groups. So we've pushed them into March to kind of go alongside the range of consultations that GSU are doing. And we've also been having some conversations around sort of the student priorities work that we're doing. So particularly thinking about some of the stuff that I was working on within Activism Week and sort of with different faculties on placement issues. That's something that I've kind of been exploring more in terms of sort of supporting students with employability. I think so within the liberation stuff, I've also been helping our liberation organisers and network chairs. So they've had a few projects that they're sort of working on that they've sort of come to me because they want to keep it going. And there's a few things that I can use my position for. So particularly with the Safer Campuses campaign and also some issues around the lack of accessibility for disabled students on campus. So those are some things. But yeah, I guess, I don't know if that shows how it's differed, but I think, yeah, there's a few different projects and definitely a lot of issues for students at the moment.
Okay, wonderful. I thought you'd give an answer like that because I wanted to really ask, how do you think you've coped with the balance between student priorities and the shifts thereof, especially at this time of year, exams are coming, different student issues are coming up, and some of your remit work, the work that you wanted to prioritize. Because something that we did notice is that for a lot of your scores, a lot of them are still yellow. And what we wondered is that one, I think I have my answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. Is that sort of you being overly critical on yourself for the amount of progress that you've made towards those areas? Or is it the case that that is a true representation of how far you've gotten with those things? And if that's the case, how do you balance the work that you're doing towards that versus the student priorities, which of course kind of have to take priority?
Yeah. I think you are right. Like, if a student knocks on the door to our office, then whatever campaign we might be working on is second to that student who has come to our office, because, you know, if a student believes that we should be spending our work time helping them, then who are we to kind of say no? Yeah, I think I guess a lot of these I wanted to be throughout the year, and so they kind of feel like they're not finished, and they feel like they won't be finished when I leave. But maybe I need to kind of reflect on, like, what should the end goal be if this were to be green by the end of the year. So I think I'll kind of have a reflection around that. I think if I were to say the one I've made the most progress on, it would probably be student training and development, just because I've been able to kind of deliver activism week, and I'm kind of working on different, I guess, things we can offer. So it's less of an abstract thing than maybe the other areas, which are kind of bigger. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, I think in terms of the work remit areas, so the campus, the sports, that kind of thing, I do think I've been able to kind of get involved in those things, as maybe not as much as maybe I'd want to, but I do think I've been able to kind of balance that. I don't feel I've been dragged away from it too much by other priorities.
I was muted. Okay. Because I would say that is probably the primary, I don't want to say concern, but that was the primary point of reflection from some of the other panelists who aren't here, also including myself. How to ensure that you, how do I explain this? Okay, so with some of the things that you're working on, of course, like you said, there may not be a quote unquote finishing point in sight for them just because of how ambiguous they are. So I suppose what would probably give more encouragement to some of the other panelists are you reviewing where you are now in relation to those goals, where you would like to be by the end of your term in office, and the action points that are going to take you from where you are now to where you'd like to be. Where would you deem yourself actually to have made impact/success in those areas? Because you can pick a very, very big, meaty topic and say that you're going to conquer this by the time that you're done. But if you're being realistic, it's a bit too broad for you to have 100% completed. What are the definite things that you want to do between now and then? What would be in your eyes, you having said, okay, I feel as though I've actually made achievement towards this project of mine, towards this wider goal. But yes, because that was actually something that I was quite contemplating on. Let me not complicate the word. That was something I was contemplating on. Seeing the yellows, but then at the same time reviewing the student mandatory work that you've done. For instance, the work that you've done towards jobs and placement support for students, because like you mentioned, that is kind of a pressing student priority at the moment. Okay, so you did mention about the commuter student focus group panel being pushed back until March. Okay, so I suppose something that we're conscious of is that we're well into the second term, and soon that second term will be, rounding up. What is the ideal outcome for this focus group, and how can you implement the feedback from this focus group before the end of the academic year, so that at least something has been done in the way of that work, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I think for me, I'd want to make sure we have that feedback, and then from that, produce some recommendations, and work out where we can change our practice, both as the union and the university. So I think for me, my goal for this by the end of the year is to make sure that people have that information and can use it to empower them to do better for commuter students. and hopefully going forward in delivery of teaching or different activities within the Students' Union, we are embedding, or like it's natural to consider the current commuter students' preferences and experiences within that. So for me, it's more about producing something like a resource that people can use to then do better for them.
Okay, cool. I think this will probably come under some of your action points. The kind of, well, I'm not going to write off the year because the year has still got quite some few months in it. But the action points that you're going to make your priority between now and the end of the academic year, until June, really, in relation to your goals and to your work. So regarding, you made a point about how you've been working with the schools of health and education on the issue of COVID denial, vaccine hesitancy, and the NHS now revoked bar on staff and students practicing medicine while unvaccinated. So it's that latter half that I had a question about. So what was the consensus on the bar? Was it towards the revoking of the bar? Was it towards the student response of the bar, or the impact of students towards that bar? Said bar.
Yeah, so this came up because students in School of Education were sort of, I guess, concerned because their peers were sort of denying the impact of COVID, particularly on the NHS. So then I thought it could be useful for within the School of Health for some students to maybe talk about their experiences. But it was also addressing the wider issue of our students who may not want to be vaccinating and whether they'd be able to complete a degree if they weren't allowed to go on to placement. So there was kind of those two areas that I was wanting to work on around COVID denial, but also the potential of people losing their qualifications. And the revoked bar means that we obviously don't have to be so worried about it, but there is still that, I guess, like the attitudes are still there. It's just that this bar on practicing has gone, which kind of saves people the conversation or saves people the concern. So yeah, it was kind of the beginning of some work that has sort of, I guess, not become redundant, but become less of a priority.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted more clarity on that because I do know that, as you mentioned, that was, to call it a pressing concern was quite an understatement. I know, for instance, for a lot of students who are Medway based, not necessarily Greenwich, because we don't really have those subjects in this area, that was something that was impacting them and by proxy impacting the Greenwich students who were here. But okay, that is okay. So going forward, because from this point, we're going to be working on basically just your action points towards, well, from this panel to the rest of the year. And if there's another panel, I think there is, but yeah, I think there is. But yes, specifically these action points, because what we would like to see by next panel is something concrete that you have done, that you can say that you have done. And that if that were to be the last thing that you did in your time in office, that you could actually reflect and say, okay, yes, I can definitely say that I've done X, Y, and Z towards these goals that I set out, right? So I suppose as a question, what do you think will be kind of your priority moving forward from this panel towards, or next time we see you? Both in line of some of the things that you did want to do, but then also student priorities that have arisen that you realize that you want to focus more on.
I think if there was one thing that I could work on for the rest of the year to complete, it would probably be the work I wanted to do on student activism and sort of giving students the resources to empower themselves to take action on things, and just building like a space where we're celebrating student leaders who are making an impact, and I guess cultivating more students to be taking actions, whether it's big or small. I think that's something that I'm quite keen to do. Yeah, that would probably be a big priority for me.
Okay, and then I suppose that can actually encompass everything else. If you can stir up the student to take a stand on the matters and issues that are important to them, then I suppose that is your legacy complete. Actually, that's a good point. You are working on plans for an activism hub that you're working with Attica on to. Is that begin or just do work towards? Could you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah. So, I started designing this like idea of a hub that would show students different structures and methods of lobbying within and outside the university, and then working with our team kind of came to the decision to create the activism week, which was kind of about developing some skills, networking, taking some action, but I wanted to kind of make sure that it wasn't just that week of events. So I sort of connected with Attica because she's obviously keen on having an activist union as well. And I thought, you know, if we're both kind of working to the same thing, maybe we can combine our interests and maybe do something even bigger. So what we started working on was trying to collate some of the examples of students who have taken action, whether it's that they, you know, protested about something on campus, they sent a group email that made a change, or if they've kind of gone into politics at a sort of higher level, just to show students the different levels of change making, and that any student can do it. So that was going to be the sort of recognition piece, and that's where we started. I'm sort of still working out how to do the resources side, because the way that our comms team have put the website together means that this will probably have to split into different sections. So we have a campaigns section, for example, so maybe we have to share campaigns that students can get involved in through that, but then we put representation structures in our representation section, and we put some key things that might empower students about their rights into our advice section. So it might have to look like, it might have to be embedded into each part of what we offer, as opposed to being like a hub of activism. So I'm kind of trying to work out how to embed it into those different places. But yeah, it's something that is in progress that I would like to complete by the end of the year.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, cool. So I believe that's pretty much all the questions, but I don't know, Jerry, in the time that we've been discussing, are there any questions that you have for Zoe?
No.
All right, wonderful. You never know, sometimes you just wake up and you think, I never thought about this while I was reading your report, but you know what, I'd like to find out. Okay, cool. So that's really the primary questions that we have for you today. So thank you so much for attending. Are there any questions that you have for us? Or I'm not sure if I've ever asked it before, but yes.
I don't know. I guess I would just like thank you for always scrutinizing me, and yeah, I think for this next report, so you want kind of more of a wrap up of the year for the next, yeah, okay. Yeah, is there anything that you guys maybe think from what I talk about or what I've worked on that you'd like to see more of, or that you think I don't know, like that kind of interests you? I don't know if that's a
I mean, definitely, since we're in feedback hour now. I think something that interests me particularly is just your liaison with the university. Um, because something that I think is striking that comes up in a lot of your work that I notice and I appreciate is when there's a particular issue, especially when it bothers students a lot, you're very, very quick to go and liaise with the university on that. And I think that is an effort that is appreciated by the student body because it means that, okay, my concern is actually being taken seriously. Now, does that mean the university is always going to automatically, agree or compromise? Of course not. Especially as you've seen with the request you made concerning, I think it was IT and admin systems, because of things like financial reasons given by the university. But I think something that I would be interested to find out a bit more on, especially towards you wrapping up your work, is sort of like not like an SOP, but kind of like an SOP on how it is that an officer can take a student concern and just go straight to the university and that liaison process. Because I think that is something that if you made it a bit more transparent to students, they would be a lot more likely to bring their concerns to you. But that was just a thought on my heart, I suppose. Um, but yes, I believe that's pretty much it. So I suppose I'll hand over to Ryan or Henry or both. Um, yes, that's pretty much all from me.
Thank you, Zoe. So you can go whenever you like. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time.
Bye.